Welcome to the Flourishing Life channel. Glad that you have joined me today. I'm Chris Howlett. Here at the Flourishing Life channel, I always try to share information and helpful tips for you to live the flourishing, abundant life that you've always wanted to live, and the life that God wants you to live. I've always been interested in the intersection between religion and science, particularly religion and health, particularly mental health. And several years ago, about 15 years ago really, I started reading positive psychology. That was at the time, a relatively new branch of psychology, and it was becoming more and more popular. There were some popular books that were being published. Folks in corporate America were grabbing a hold of this idea of strengths and serving and working with your strengths. And so I read one of those books, and it just resonated with me. The fact that the things that they were telling people to do in positive psychology that they were learning from their research, the activities, the attitudes that they were encouraging people to adopt, that those are the same things that the church has been talking about for thousands of years, that the Bible teaches on how to live the abundant life that God came to give us and offer us through His Son, Jesus Christ. And so it just piqued my attention, so I started studying more and digging more, and actually wrote my doctoral dissertation about this subject, about the abundant life, the flourishing life, how to help people experience that kind of life. So this intersection between positive mental health, flourishing life, that's a word they often use to describe this kind of life, a life of subjective well-being, where someone is truly what we would say happy, not just surface happy, not just kind of on the surface happy, but deeply happy, a deeply satisfying and meaningful life. The intersection of what they were learning and religion, again, it's that thing that sparks my curiosity, sparks my interest, and when I learn things, I want to share them with you so that you can put these into practice in your life. All truth is God's truth. So some new information has come to light about the link between religious activity and deaths of despair, and actually they're the opposite. The more religiously active you are, the less likely you will fall victim to a death of despair. So it's good news if you're a Christian and you regularly attend public worship. It's bad news if you're not, or even if you are a Christian but you've been out of the habit of attending public worship, either because of the pandemic or if you just dropped out before that. Here's a quote from the Harvard Gazette, May 6 of 2020. Based on research that was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association's Psychiatry Journal. Okay, people who attended religious services at least once a week were significantly less likely to die from deaths of despair, including deaths related to suicide, drug overdose, and alcohol poisoning, according to new research led by the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. So some pretty high academic standards there. So this is a major study that was funded by the National Institute of Health. It goes back and surveys a bunch of research that's been done, included 66,492 women, 43,141 men. So this is a massive study, and I think these findings are important, and they tell us something about how we can live this life that God wants us to live, this flourishing life, a happy life, and avoid these deaths of despair. What it says is there's significantly lower risk of death among churchgoers due to these deaths of despair, and that's fascinating to me. You know, the so-called deaths of despair, somebody coined that phrase about 2015, as we were seeing as a culture, especially here in the United States, this increase in deaths of despair. They have been on the increase for everyone in our society, but especially we're seeing these deaths of despair increase in middle-aged white Americans. Now, these deaths of despair have been blamed on lots of different factors, from opioid abuse and other phenomena, but this study actually suggests that the real culprit is declining religious practice. Not necessarily religious belief, although that's been on some decline and perhaps accelerated decline recently, but this study goes way back to the 1980s, and it's particularly interesting to note, it's actually the decline in religious practice rather than just religious belief, the decline in weekly worship attendance that's connected to this rise in deaths of despair. This is a working paper. It includes researchers from Wellesley College, Ohio State University, and Notre Dame University. Again, it's a long-term study, and what they speculate, or what they talk about, what they share in the paper is that since the 1980s, religious practice has been on the decline, and researchers noticed the large decline in religious practice was mostly associated with a group that was also experiencing increases in deaths of despair. So, as religious practice decreases, deaths of despair increase. A lot of this is speculation as far as the decline in religious practice, why that's happening. But one of the things they point to in our society, in our culture, are the what used to be called, or still is called, but we don't have them anymore, blue laws. You heard of blue laws? Blue laws, you might not be old enough to remember blue laws. There were actual laws in states that limited what businesses could be open on Sunday. So only a very few stores were allowed to be open on Sundays. And even my own memory, when in the early 80s, my family lived, I was a child, my family lived in Bowling Green, or outside of Bowling Green, Kentucky. And I remember on Sundays, if we didn't have gas in the car, we weren't going very far because there were no gas stations open on Sundays. And I think those are among some of the first businesses that were allowed to open as we, I guess you say, liberalized these blue laws or got rid of these blue laws. So the blue laws said you couldn't have stores open, you couldn't have businesses open on Sunday. So that limited the opportunities that people had for activity on Sunday morning. And what it did is actually encourage people to attend worship service. Wasn't much else to do. There's nothing to do on a Sunday morning. Then simply you might want to go to church on a Sunday morning. So these laws, again, they've been tightly linked to religious practice. And when you repeal the laws, then what we saw in our culture is that religious practice did decrease. So this team examined data concerning over 1 million deaths from alcohol abuse, suicide, and drug overdose from the 1970s all the way up into the early 2000s. So it covers over a 30-year period of time. The linkage was and is with the particular behavior of attending worship services with other people. I think that's a key. It's going to where others are gathered and participating in this common activity of worship. Now, they don't know why this is helpful. They don't know what about getting together for worship. This study wasn't designed to and probably there's not data there, to explain the why. They just know the what. As religious practice declines, so deaths of despair increase. They know that. They don't know necessarily why. But I have some ideas. I think certainly, first of all, it's linked to the fact that we are relational beings. And as you drop out of worship, as you drop out of religious practice, you tend to become more isolated. And if you're isolated, you're not connected with other human beings as much, and that leads to lots of detrimental mental health problems. It can. And so another reason I think that's very important, that, again, the study didn't show this, but this is my speculation. We're relational beings. The second reason, I think, the main reason, is because human beings, we seek out meaning. We have this innate need and desire to have meaning associated with our lives and with our activities. We want our lives to make a difference. We want our lives to matter. We want our lives to have meaning. We don't want to look back on our lives and say, well, that didn't really mean anything. That didn't have any impact. That was kind of random. Nobody wants to get to the end of their life and think about their life like that. So we're driven to be meaning-making and meaning-searching, meaning-finding beings. We need meaning. And we find meaning and purpose in life in a relationship with God and in worshiping God. And so when that activity declines, there's going to be less of a sense of meaning in life, and also less relational connection, which those things combined together are going to lead to lack of hopefulness about life, and then that's what leads to the deaths of despair. What I find particularly interesting about this research is that it coincides with what's been happening in the last couple of years because of the pandemic. Most churches, not all, but most churches report that their attendance has dropped significantly since the pandemic. And, if you had 100 people, say just a relatively typical church, if you had 100 people in worship before the pandemic, the average is about a 30% drop. So the average now would be 70. So that's 30 people just kind of just dropped out. So that's significant. And as our nation has noted this drop in religious activity, we're seeing a very significant uptick in deaths of despair. Very significant uptick in deaths of despair. And some researchers are pointing to this as even more evidence of this link between religious activity and involvement, that link with better mental outcomes. So, the bottom line of the video today: attending church is good for you. Has it been a while since you've been a part of church? Are you one of those folks who's dropped out because of the pandemic, or maybe you just dropped out years before? Maybe you're a person who never has been much engaged in religious activity. Well, I want to encourage you, for your own mental health, your own spiritual health, and even your own physical health, to get involved, to go back to church. If you haven't been there, go there and attend, check it out. Check out the faith that is uplifted there Sunday after Sunday. It's good for you. It's good for those around you. It's good for society. Well, thanks for watching this video. Stick around the channel and hit like on this video. Hit subscribe if you want to, and hit the notification bell if you want to get notified of when we put up new videos. Put up videos regularly to try to encourage you and enable you to live that life of abundance, fulfillment, meaning, that flourishing life, the life that Jesus Christ offers.